everybody, to the War and Peace Baseball Podcast. I'm here today, Alex Rudy, Farbod Markazi, Ray Estrada. I'm Alex Zui. And how are you guys doing today?
Wonderful.
Excellent.
Yeah, I mean, this is kind of the only go-round of this week. Sad to say that we lost a little bit of recording to some corrupt files. Yes, rest in peace, War and Peace. So this is our only one for the week, but we'll be on regular schedule for the most part. And, we'll talk about kind of a mix of fantasy stories and, just regular baseball stories today. We'll talk about one of the great recent retired players in this game who was in the news recently. And, of course, I'm talking about Jeff Francouer. Derek Jeter was in the news recently, too, I think, for some honored night or something. I forget exactly, right? Rudy, something like that?
I have no idea what we're talking about.
Yeah, I don't recall exactly. I think the Yankees got smoked in that one, though, so it's not really a big story. I think we should not talk about that game because it was pretty depressing.
Tanaka had his monthly start where he just gets absolutely demolished.
Is that going to be a monthly thing? I really hope it's not going to be.
It always has been. I don't see why it would change.
Well, all right.
I will say this, though. I really do miss the days when there was a star in the league that was as famous and popular as Jeter was. I don't think we have that right now.
I think Bryce Harper might be close, and he's
but Bryce Harper
in a different way.
Maybe,
he's like in the fiery type of way. I think
nothing compares to when there's this one of the best players in the game is playing in New York. I think it helps baseball a lot.
Aaron
in mainstream media.
Okay. That's all I had to say about that. We can talk about Jeff Francouer too. He was in the news recently. He just announced his retirement this past week, and of course, everybody knows he was the third place finisher, the Rookie of the Year in 2005, and 2007 Gold Glove Award winner. I mean, that's just common knowledge at this point, right? He amassed an unimpressive 6.1 career WAR in his career, sadly, and any fond Jeff Francouer moments to share? Silence. Okay.
I think he really truly represents the definition of average, mediocre MLB player. He is, when they have the stat win above replacement, the namesake of our podcast, the 0 is the player who's a replacement level player. That was Francouer for the vast majority of his career.
Well, that's kind of
replacement level player, I would say. But he's a lovable cult hero, and I will miss him. And it's cannon of an arm.
Despite your honorable tone, that was pretty insulting. But you know what? Yep, we love the arm. We love the name. We love the fact that he's played for every single team. So there you go, Jeff Francouer. Let's get to some actual relevant news, though, shall we? Let's talk some fantasy baseball because that's what we normally do on the Thursday show. And we'll talk about a little closer mix-up here. Edwin Diaz is apparently out of a closer job right now. And he was really hyped, one of the top 5 closers arguably heading into the year just because that strikeout ratio and just not getting it done. I don't have the exact numbers, but it's a whip that's way too high. And ERA is way too high, basically. Those are the numbers that matter.
He had he struggled with his command. He's in 15 or third innings. He has 10 walks. And last year he had 15 walks and 51 and 2/3 innings. And I mean, something's obviously not right. I think, in the long run, obviously this drops the talent is obviously there. I'm a Diaz owner. I'm not too worried. I think I'm expecting him to turn it around. For now, I guess if you really need closers, you can look, and you like the Mariners, you can look into Steve Cishek and guys like Nick Vincent. Who are probably going to get more opportunities right now.
Yeah, see, this is a case where I don't think it's the best idea to chase the Mariners saves right now, just because it's a really weak bullpen, and
that's why I said for whatever reason,
Edwin Diaz is likely going to bounce back and return to that role.
Yeah, I'm not worried. I'm not worried at all.
Yeah, there's reason for a little bit of worry, but I think he's a great buy low. That's obvious enough. So, Edwin Diaz, I think we have not lost faith in him quite yet. Let's talk about a few young players breaking in to the big leagues this past week that are making a little bit of a splash, making some noise, and that would be Ian Happ of the Cubs and Bradley Zimmer for the Indians. The World Series matchup, teams each added a nice young player to the outfield. Which one of these guys would you rather own going forward? Because there's some different circumstances around both.
This is what I was going to ask you, because with Bradley Zimmer, he was called up because Almonte's out for a month at least, and depending on how Zimmer does, he could possibly push Almonte out, right? But Ian Happ, he's up in the big leagues, and they were told, like, it was already a well-known fact that he's going to be sent down because there's just that roster's already stacked enough. I mean, I think Hayward's their biggest, like, most major piece. That's.
Are you serious right now? It's a little bit distracting.
I think Hayward's their most dangerous piece. That's like out or injured, and when he comes back, I think he's coming back very soon too. Happ will likely not have much room to play, and I mean, if there's any manager in the game that moves his guys around and likes doing that with his guys, is Joe Madden. But I think Ian Happ is. I think Bradley Zimmer is going to be the more. I think you take the bet with Bradley Zimmer more so than Ian Happ. Yeah.
Yeah, I agree. More solidified role for Zimmer, I'd say, because, Lonnie Chisenhall doesn't have to play. Abraham Almonte doesn't have to be on the roster. So in that regard, I like Zimmer more. I do really like Ian Happ's bat, though.
Yeah.
I really like prospects that show growth in their minor league development.
I have a question, though.
What's that?
Obviously, he's not a Cody Bellinger, but, I mean, if you guys look at Bellinger's situation when he was first called up, he was supposed to be called up June at the earliest, but there was the injuries to guys like Tolles, Peterson, Agon, and Agon's recovery is going slow. So there were, like, pieces that there were things that had to happen for Bellinger to get this spot on the roster. Do you think Happ has even the slightest chance of?
Yeah, and I was going to get to that. Is that Happ absolutely can find a role in this team because it's a team that will play. It's not one of those teams that's going to hold down young guys just in favor of veterans. If you have a hot bat, that bat is going to play. Ian Happ,
especially with the Cubs, the way they're playing right now, I'm not saying they're playing poorly, but they want to win.
They are playing poorly, though.
They want to win right now. And if Ian Happ is the productive bat in that lineup, they're going to get him in that lineup.
Yeah, no question. Ian Happ can hit.
I mean, there's no doubt that the Cubs are not a team that sticks conservatively to their management style. From both the coaching staff and the front office, they're willing to take risks and make bold moves, and I don't see any reason to say that there's, that Happ can't find his way to regular playing time, though. I honestly think the Cubs have way bigger issues in the rotation than, rotating their bats and now their lineup. Not that it's like the fantasy relevant point to make here, but just in general.
Well, yeah, like I was about to say about Ian Happ is that the fact that he is an infielder that is playing outfield, you can put him anywhere. He's Ben Zobrist already, basically. You can throw him at second base anytime. You can throw him at a corner infield even if you wanted to. The corner outfields is probably where he's going to play the most. And mixing and matching is what Madden does, and he's not a dummy who's going to bench one of his hottest hitters that he has available. He knows that, if Happ forces the issue is going to be putting him in the lineup, but he's going to make his way into the lineup if that's the case. He's going to Bellinger his way into the lineup. I like how Cody Bellinger's earned that verb in his namesake for forcing your way into the roster.
I think, did I say pull a Bellinger too, or?
Yeah, you brought up Bellinger, and I don't see why Ian Happ can't be Cody Bellinger. I'm not going to predict quite the same numbers because that would be a little bit insane at this point, but I do like Ian Happ a lot. I think he should be owned in...
The talent is obviously there.
I think he should be owned in almost every league where you have some form of bench or more than 3 outfield slots available. And I think the fact that he will likely gain other eligibility throughout the year if he does stay up is going to be a big plus as well. So yeah, I think that's enough about the young guns there, the young bats anyway. Let's talk about one young pitcher who is back in the big leagues. That's Jose Berrios. Do you think he is here to stay this time around? Because last year was a really rough go-round, but looked good in his first start, and the Minnesota rotation does not look like anything special. So
except that Irvin Santana.
Even then, I don't think there's anybody that is more important of a pitcher in that rotation than Jose Berrios. So,
Berrios, yeah.
So what do you think about Berrios?
I think he's here to stay. Last year, there's a lot of guys that we've talked about this before. They've gone down for they've come up, but then they've gone down for like fine tuning, command wise, whatever.
Thanks for stealing my main point for Boat. I appreciate it.
And then just this year, I think this year he has a 1.13 ERA in AAA. I don't think he has anything else left to prove in AAA. So I think he's here to stay unless like he topples down again. But I think he's here to stay.
Again with the crunching, what's going on? Is it like?
That's not me.
I know it's not you. I think we know who it is. I'll let let any listeners try to. Oh, okay. I was gonna say I'll let any listeners try to guess who it is, but yeah. I guess you're just really upset about Farbode stealing your point. But do you have anything more to add on Berrios?
I only do it when Farbode is speaking. So take that as you will.
Wow.
I would just say the Twins decided to go with a relatively unconventional strategy, at least for modern baseball, in terms of keeping him in the minors to start the year, which you see a lot more rarely these days. You have guys like Cotton and Snell and what's his name again and Joe Ross, Amir Garrett, Joe Ross, guys who had previous MLB experience like
Glasnow.
Yes, Glasnow, who had experience, a taste of the big leagues last year, who had various degrees of success. Most of them struggled, like Berrios, and immediately started this year and struggled. And a lot of those guys we got sent back down to have finer tuning. Whereas Berrios, pitched really well in the World Baseball Classic, was given more time to master his control in the minors this year, which is, I would say, the biggest attribute that young pitchers have difficulty struggling in modern baseball. You see a lot of guys, they have the power, they have the movement, they have the speed, but what really makes them, effective in the big leagues is if they have the control, and that takes the longest to develop. And not everyone can be Julio Urias and just come in and pull that off. So looks like a bright future for Berrios.
Yeah, and hopefully there's probably going to be hiccups. I'm not going to say it's going to be flawless. I'm not going to slot him in to the top 40 right away or anything crazy like that. But I do like the profile. He's a guy who struggled with command, but historically is as a prospect been renowned for his great command and his mixing of off-speed pitches and just overall pitching savvy. So I think he's gonna get a full shot here. I don't think you're gonna be looking at anything too special, but yeah, I don't even know if I'd say he's quite at the point where he's a must-own in fantasy even, but he's going to stay up in the big leagues is the main point to take away there. And yeah, we'll see what he can do. A couple more bats I wanted to talk about before we move on to our next segment here. I want to talk about Jose Bautista, who is in the news today for some very Jose Bautista reasons, I'll say, for pimping a home run against the Braves while down by 4 runs. And obviously that sounds bad enough, but the fact that he's it's not just
a bold strategy.
It's the fact that he taunted the other team. He scoffed at the first baseman as he ran by, and he went face to face with the catcher. And it's
you see what one of the Braves players said as a joke?
No,
Eric O'Flaherty said, "Surprised he's ready to fight again after last year."
Oh yeah, I did see that.
Well, that's the thing. This
Flaherty is still relevant. Good
still a Brave nonetheless.
Jeff Mathis
is
a multi-year major league contract.
I think he was the guy who Bautista hit the home run off of.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
To be fair, Farbo, Jeff Mathis is a really good pitch framer. I will admit that.
Yeah, Bautista. So the fact is that happened. That's not really anything new for him. But the thing that is new for him is not really hitting because he's been off to a really slow start. Picked it up the last week or so. He's got, I think, like 3 or 4 home runs in the last week, but definitely not the same guy. Definitely not the same bat speed, the same health. Just not looking like a 40-plus home run guy in the slightest. And that's something we said about players like Albert Pujols. It's obviously not the same case track record-wise as Pujols had, but what kind of value can you extract from Bautista? Or like, what do you think about his value going forward?
I'm not a fan.
Can you explain why?
I mean,
I feel like that's part of what we do. I don't know.
I think he's over the hill. Okay. I think he's just over the hill. I think it's been too many injuries. I think he broke out late. I don't think he's a power hitter. Those guys just you don't see last a super long time, and he's no young guy. I think he's just in the decline. I don't think he's particularly relevant for fantasy purposes at this point in his career. I think he had a great 5 or 6 year stretch there. I think this is just he's a declining power hitter at this point. I don't think there's anything more or less to it. I would say it's that simple in my mind.
Yeah, I mean, you look at Bautista's numbers, and they're comparable to his pre-breakout numbers, so it's not encouraging. I wouldn't invest in him.
So it seems like the consensus here is that Bautista is a non-ownable fantasy option, and that's a pretty steep cliff to fall off of. It's one thing to be, turn into a role player from a fantasy standpoint when this was a guy who went in the first 2 rounds of drafts. That's how good he was. And obviously the health has changed, and that's going to be a very important factor. But when he's on the field, off to a slow start, obviously. But historically, one of the better plate discipline bats out there. Obviously a guy who knows how to adjust and, hit home runs, but it's not going to be 40 plus anymore. It's going to be probably around 20, 25 is what I would say most likely. But I think there is some value to be extracted there, definitely. And this is kind of a long shot scenario that I can see happening, is something the likes of what Pujols was able to do when he kind of dealt with that health inflicted decline. Is he started to get a lot more aggressive at the plate, really sacrificed a lot of batting average, but managed to make up for that lost bat speed by just with his knowledge, and was able to jump on a lot more pitches, hit a lot more home runs, still be a really productive fantasy player.
He's second in the AL.
That's kind of a long shot.
I would just say my only issue with that is that Pujols, I just don't think they're comparable in terms of talent and ability at all. And
I'm not saying that they are.
Bautista was definitely one of the best players in the game at one point, but Pujols is literally one of the best ever. I just don't think that that's definitely a best case scenario. But I think maybe I don't think that's really realistic at this point. I think yeah, go ahead.
Can you say Pujols again?
Pujols.
Okay.
It's Pujols.
There's an L.
Yeah.
I've never honestly heard the L.
I've never heard anybody.
Is that actually true? Do you actually pronounce it Pujols?
Albert Pujols.
I've never heard.
Albert Pujols.
I don't think I've ever heard anyone pronounce the L in my entire life. I'll be completely honest.
I will say I've never heard anybody get upset about not saying the L though, because that's not like a name that you're like, hey, say my guy's name right, do it right now, because that's. I mean, yeah. It still doesn't roll off the tongue very comfortably.
To the point about kind of go back to Bautista. We mentioned that he has walk numbers and his on base should be pretty good, but his on base is, as of right now, is the worst since 2009. He's 330 on base, but only 376 slugging, 705 OPS. So there's he doesn't have any value at this point. And the difference between him and Pujols, besides Pujols being more talented, is that Bautista's swing is a lot more violent and could lead to injury prone in a guy who is hampered by injuries, whereas Pujols is just a very solid swing that.
Pujols is a professional hitter.
Yeah, pretty much. I mean, not to slight Bautista, but I mean Pujols's swing is just beautiful.
I don't think you can argue that Pujols is really historically through his career, yes, one of the best hitters of all time. But right now, he's not a pure hitter. He's definitely an all or nothing, pull heavy, like low batting average type of hitter now. That's just who he is, and that's productive still for him because he can do it. He's not the same guy he was before. I just wanted to make that. Clear.
He left the game today with hamstring tightness.
Yep.
That sounds like very Albert Pujols news. So
day to day.
Everything.
That was after taking a walk, so he's chilling.
All these players are living up to their track records, it seems, in the news recently. One guy that doesn't have much of a track record that we'll talk about real quick is Hernan Perez, who is filling in full-time now for the Brewers since Ryan Braun's on the DL. But Perez had a very, very nice year last year, created a lot of buzz around his name, but still didn't find himself in a solidified role to start this year off. But now he's got a chance, and he's doing what he did last year. He's running like crazy, hitting for a little bit of power here and there, and swinging a hot stick, riding the high BABIP, as it were. So, what are your thoughts on Hernan Perez? Where do you slot him in, just from a rankings perspective? Because there's a lot of value to be had there.
Is there really a lot of value?
I think so. This is a fantasy baseball show, and Hernan Perez is one of the top fantasy profiles. I don't know.
Solarte to me.
I think that's a little bit of an understatement. That might be what he evens out to if you give him a full slate. But right now, and even last year, Hernan Perez was significantly more valuable than Solarte. And Solarte is a very, very nice, underrated player. Don't get me wrong there. But the speed factor for Perez is definitely more significant. This year, not quite the same, but he did run a lot last year. And that's kind of the point there, is that the speed is there. The speed will come. I think the most important things to look at are that he's not striking out like crazy. He's not overwhelmed. There doesn't seem to be any serious regression coming from what he did last year. There's going to be a little bit of regression. I don't think he's a guy that'll hit for like an 860 OPS, but a guy that's going to run a lot, a guy that's going to get on base enough, a guy's going to contribute probably 15 to 20 homers if you gave him a full schedule of games, which I don't know he's going to get. The Brewers lineup is a very, very crowded one. The fact that he does play multiple positions probably helps, but he can't play third because Shaw's there. I guess he could take some at-bats from VR, who's just been awful this season so far. So it's really hard to say where he's going to slot in when Braun does come back, but right now I think you have to own him.
Yeah, I would say looking at the advanced stats, nothing stands out, like you said, is particularly egregious. He should, no reason to say, isn't maintain this above average level of play.
Last year he stole 34 bases in 123 games. That's really good.
He also has 2 this year, to be fair, though.
He
gets caught stealing a lot. If that is a league that takes that into account.
Yeah, I guess that is
7 out of 41 attempts last year getting caught. I wouldn't say is particularly.
It's not awful. It's just not.
I wouldn't say it's great though.
It's not ideal. So yeah, I don't think he's not in my top 100. He's definitely.
Do you think he has 2020 potential?
I do. I don't know about the power quite as much.
He's not particularly young, but I mean,
he's not a power hitter either. That's the biggest part of the. Everybody's hitting homers now, though. So anybody, I can say anybody has 20 homer potential, but Perez, I can see 10 to 15 homers and 25 to 30 steals, and significantly less crunching. So there's that to keep in mind as well. I'm really nailing you on this today.
You're right. I deserve to be nailed. All
right.
It's just continuing the theme of unprofessionalism.
I'm willing to move past it if you are. All right. Let's go ahead and move on to our next little segment we're going to do here, and we're going to discuss some of our most surprising players of the season so far and most disappointing players of the season. I think it's about the quarter mark in the season, so I think that's a fair arbitrary landmark to go ahead and to throw on.
When have we ever had actual landmarks?
I mean, sometimes we try. I don't know.
Only at the beginning of the year, right?
I think so, and at the end of the year. But so we'll do this segment, and we'll give you a quick injury update. But we're not going to play stat game because, as I mentioned, we had a failed recording, and we played the stat game on
I won
last recording. That is correct.
I won.
It doesn't count. It definitely doesn't.
I will not confirm nor deny this. But you're going to miss out on a pretty fun stat game, if I do say so myself. I don't know why I mentioned that, just to kind of tease it, I guess. I don't know. But the fact is, let's talk about our most surprising players. That's what matters right now, right? So any of you guys, just throw a name.
Jason Vargas.
All right. Throw information now.
I mean, did anyone expect him? I mean, before he got like smacked by the Yankees today, did anyone expect him? Did anyone expect him to have a 1.01 ERA with a 2.3 WAR through his first 7 starts of the year? Anybody
that says they did are definitely lying. So that's all I have to say about that. Jason Vargas is not an ownable pitcher in fantasy.
I have 4 words: regress to the mean. End of story.
Are you sure the first word maybe should be regression instead of just regress?
He will regress to the mean.
Well, that's 6 words now. You just ruined.
Okay, well, thank you for managing to take that apart and kill all my dreams.
I'm just tearing you apart.
Jason Vargas is hot garbage, and he's just a innings-eating pitcher at this point in his career, without a doubt. I would not say, unless you're truly desperate and just need anything you can get, I would honestly just ignore him in fantasy baseball. Regardless of his season so far. It's like Matt Garza's also had an amazing year so far, but I wouldn't tell anyone to pick him up either for their team.
Matt Garza is a guy that, I think a lot of people don't even realize is still pitching in the major leagues.
Exactly.
Those are the guys we love to talk about the most. But I don't see any reason for either of you guys. If you somehow manage to own him during his hot streak, then good for you. If you're still hanging on to that, if you're still holding the bag, so to speak, then I think it's time to leave it on somebody's doorstep and run. So let's go ahead and talk about some sluggers that are off to very, very surprising starts, I think.
Matt Harvey.
That is not okay.
Not yet.
I thought you meant against him. Yeah.
What?
Oh.
Do you want to talk about Matt Harvey? Because we can talk about Matt Harvey.
Not yet.
No.
Let's save Matt Harvey for later.
We'll save the Matt Harvey roast for later in the show.
The cruncher is ready.
Let's be optimistic. Let's praise the guys that have earned our praise. And one of those guys is Ryan Zimmerman, obviously, who owned the month of April and still hitting right now. Like, not hitting as many homers, obviously. That was going to slow down for sure. But nothing, like, he's regressing from a 420 batting average, but not regressing like drastically. I think he's still a very valuable commodity, and the most important thing is he's still on the field. So, like Ryan Zimmerman a lot still. Another guy who is a little more in question, I would say, is Mark Reynolds. Rudy, you want to go ahead and talk about him a little bit?
If you told me like 5 years ago that Mark Reynolds signed with the Rockies and went on a April / early May tear, I would have been like mid-May tear, I guess. I would have been like, yeah, that makes perfect sense. Like, Coors Field and Mark Reynolds, it's like a match made in heaven. But the fact that this is happening now, when he's like 36 years old, clearly after many declining seasons, I mean, great for him. I can't believe he's pulling this off. It's honestly really impressive, but I see how there's no way it can last. Like, it would be unbelievable. It would be an almost unprecedented, like, late career revival for a guy who honestly was never that good, even in his prime. And these are numbers way better than he ever put up in his prime. So, I mean, good for him, but it just doesn't seem to add up, to be honest.
Yeah, and I think it's weird because he was like the poster child for the all or nothing swing. You know, big power, really low batting average, and a ton of strikeouts. He was doing it before it was cool, and now it's cool, and he's not really doing that, and that's the weirdest part to me. Like last year was a really good season.
His range factor is very good.
Yes.
Yes, that is very important. That is one thing we've learned in our time. But last year was not atrocious. Like he had a 356 on base last year, and has a 390 on base this year. It's not like that's really good for a guy who historically barely has an on base percentage.
I will add, like last year, he hit 282, which is by far his career average, highest average over 440 plate appearances and over 118 games. That's a huge sample size. For you. That's still a huge sample size. And this year, his batting average balls in play is pretty lucky, but it's 344. But that's not insane for a 317 average. He's walking in his career averages, but more importantly, he's striking out pretty low for his career. But the one thing that really strikes out is that he's a really high ISO power percentage. So I would say, these balls aren't going to keep on flying out of the park this often for the entire season.
He's playing in Coors Field.
I mean, yes, it's possible, but 37.5% of his fly balls are coming out for homers. That's like unbelievable.
Yeah, but this is a really strong guy though, who is
37.5.
Who's known for hitting, some majestic fly balls.
That's over 1 in 3. That's absurd.
Okay, that is a little bit absurd, but like the fact remains is that he's a different player, and it's sad to say that I think the first sign of any kind of lump, he's not going to have a starting spot for this really loaded Rockies lineup. Ian Desmond will probably slide over to first base whenever Reynolds does go through any significant slump, and then they have 3 to go right in behind him there. So that's the only note there, that if you have Reynolds, just ride that hot hand until it could potentially just be extinguished. So do we have to talk about the last guy, Cody Bellinger? Because I don't think we do. I think we've talked about him.
I don't think we've ever talked about him before.
All right, so you have 10 words to describe Cody Bellinger. Go, Farbode.
Man crush. Power. Wow. How many more words do I have?
Well, if you count how many more words do I have, you just went over 10, but you only used 5 for the first part of that. So I think
then Ray can take the rest of them.
I think the point got across though, just in 5 words and in half the allotted words that I gave you. So, yeah, I agree. Cody Bellinger must be owned, and he will play every day.
Man crush power. Wow.
I'm counting as one of the words too.
Okay.
Yeah. All right. Let's get a little bit less excited and talk about some. It feels weird to say let's get less excited. Let's talk about some of the disappointing players this season. Anybody want to start us off?
Todd Frazier. He's just been bad. I mean, it's unreal how bad he's been so far this year. Never a high average guy, but he's batting 176 with a 277 on base, 324 slugging. That adds to 601 OPS. Only 3 home runs so far after not having less than 20 since 2013. 14 RBIs. Not striking out that much, only 21, but 188 BABIP, which I guess is bad luck, but
that's awful.
There's nothing good here. It's just bad. And it's not. It wasn't even a slow regression. He had his career high in homers last year. He hit 40, 98 RBIs, another career high, and just fell off a cliff so far this year. It's ridiculous.
Yeah. So sometimes, like when we talk about players that are disappointing, we try to find some sort of positives and some sort of bounce back. But it sounds like you got nothing there.
I mean, nothing in the stats.
You don't like him at all. You don't.
Nothing.
You know. Are you looking at him as an ownable player even? Because it doesn't sound like it.
I own him for some inexplicable reason, but I mean.
Well, it's very explicable. He's an all-star.
Yeah.
In his career.
You have to trust the track record that he's going to bounce back somewhat, but nothing.
He was pretty bad last year too, though.
But plenty of power
from an average
last year.
That's it, though. It was only power. I would say it was pretty empty past that, in my opinion.
I mean, he stole 50 last year, but I mean, there's really nothing here that suggests, in the stats at least, suggests a bounce back, except his track record, which never a high average guy. His highest career average is 273, and that's by a pretty wide margin. So, that's really disappointing from where he was last year to where he is so far this year.
Yeah, and I mean, part of me just wants to believe that he's hurt and there's something wrong, but it's a full season of
nagging things, or I think he's had back issues this year. But I mean, this is really bad.
But the fact is that he hit 40 homers last year, and 163 strikeouts and the 225 batting average just isn't very good. But 40 homers is serviceable. It's ownable. He has to do something, and he has to turn it around at some point, right? There's no worse times ahead for Frazier, unless he goes in the DL, in which case that is worse times ahead. But I can't give up on a guy who was considered one of the best best offensive third baseman in the game back with the Reds for some period of time anyway, or at least looked like he had the potential to be. Yeah, it's definitely I would say probably the most disappointing player of the ones that we're about to mention here. But I don't think he's completely lost. I think he's still, probably hovering around like my top 200 with, between 150 and 200 for my like fantasy rankings, just, ballparking it there. So that's definitely an ownable player. A guy that was very, 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 very good last year. And I cannot say that enough because he was the leader of the player rater in standard ESPN leagues. That's Jonathan VR, is off to an awful start.
Striking out a ton.
Yeah, he already has, 53 strikeouts this season. And, he's going to run. That's speed doesn't just dissipate. But how valuable is Jonathan VR if he's, getting on base at the Hamilton clip? Like, that's just not going to cut it. I'm not going to see a scenario where VR steals as many bases as Hamilton does anyway. Yeah, it's just not really good. He got 5 homers, but, when you're on base at a 281 clip, that's not going to cut it. And he's going to start losing at bats because of that, because the Brewers are actually a very crowded team that, is looking for ways to looking for ways to put some new bats in that lineup because they're a young team and they're trying to move pieces. And, VR was one of those bright spots last year. But was it just a 1-year career year last year for him? Do you guys think it was, or do you guys think there's still better days ahead?
It definitely could be because that was his first real full year. He hadn't played more than 87 games prior to last year's 156 when he went off. And now that he comes into a year essentially as one of the most highly touted fantasy guys, or the highly touted fantasy guy according to some rankings.
I took him so high in our league's draft. I think I took him in like the 3rd round.
Well, that's where he was supposed to go. That's where he was projected.
You can't fault the preseason hype around him because he was very good last year and he seemed like he was a reliable option, especially with his speed. But this year just hasn't been good. But just what concerns you is that he doesn't have much of a track record in terms of full seasons and success. So you worry that that last year could have been a flash in the pan.
I would just say, looking at the advanced stats,
last year he started off pretty cool too.
He's a little bit unlucky at the plate for sure, and it's not like really striking out particularly more than his career averages. Like, it's a slight bump, but nothing to really like raise an eye about. And I would say like I have following him in fantasy. Like, he started off like absurdly cold, and like he's been slowly heating up. I think I would honestly, I'm giving him patience till the All-Star break, and hoping he has it figured out by then. If honestly, he might even be a good buy low guy if you can find the right deal for him, in my opinion, because I think he's talented. He has a ton of speed, and he's shown in his career that he can hit for average pretty easily. I know it hasn't been a huge sample size, but I mean, it's too big. It always last 2 times he's been in the big league. So last year's first full season in 2015, when he played 53 games for the Astros, he had 284 as well. So I think he'll bounce back.
Just something to take in mind. Last year in April, he hit 236 with 1 home run and 3 RBIs total, and that was April. So he's gotten off to cold starts before, but this one's just a little bit more. Yeah.
Last year's pre-All-Star, and maybe this is a sign of him bouncing back. Last year's pre-All-Star numbers, he batted .298 and 6 home runs and 31 RBIs, and then he actually batted .270 after the All-Star break. So, I mean, yeah, maybe he could heat up by the time July comes around, but I mean, it's hard to always trust a guy who gets off the cold starts to say that, oh, he's going to bounce back.
Look, we're still looking at a top 100 player. Let's not get anything wrong about that, because the speed is going to drive that value alone, at the very least. And that's why I like guys with high stolen base numbers, because at the worst case scenario, they're going to steal you, at least 30 bases and be productive, So you have that to keep in mind. Don't run from VR, but don't be shocked if he doesn't finish at the top of the play rater, because I think that's a little bit ridiculous if he were to do that again. A couple more names we'll talk about here. Blake Snell got demoted the other day, and that was certainly for performance reasons. He was off to a very, very bad start, really high whip, and that's about it. Very highly rated pitching prospect. What needs to change for Snell for him to become more appealing to you?
Do better.
Well, I really don't know what to do with myself now that I've heard that really hot take. I'm baffled. I'm really caught off guard there.
I don't think he's really a guy who deserves particularly high expectations. He's an average fantasy option, I'd say, and I don't think he'll really be ever more than that. I think he'll be fine. I think he just needed some, more refining in them. He wasn't even really pitching that awful in the majors, but his control clearly needs.
He leads the majors and walks.
Some better touch, but
25.
The thing is,
That's nuts.
But at the same time, he was actually pretty effective when you account for how many runners he was just giving free passes on base. That demonstrates to you that he has the luck. I mean, he has the skill, he has the talent, he has the pitches, and he has the composure. He just, he looks like he's 12 years old. He just needs better control. I think he'll be like a slightly above average fantasy option going forward. Back. I'm not really too worried, but no one should be expecting him to be the next steal, find of a pitcher. He's like fine. He's Blake Snell. He's not going to be like Arrieta 3 years ago or anything like that.
So the talent is obviously there, huge talent, and I think people might forget that he basically spent just over a year in the minors. Like, he blew through all levels of the minor leagues in one season, and then was started the next season in AAA for a couple months, and then made his debut that next year. So he has really not had a lot of minor league time, but the talent obviously is enough to strike out batters at the major league level. Obviously, just needs to work on some other things. So I think it's still really early on in his career to give up on him. I don't think he's a ruined prospect in any way. I think the Rays know what they're doing, especially. So I like Blake Snell going forward quite a bit, actually. If you can hold on a little bit longer, if you have that bench spot, or you have a dynasty league, then certainly Blake Snell still has all the talent. The talent hasn't gone anywhere. Talent's still there. Another guy that we'll talk about. This one's gonna hurt a little bit. Greg Bird. Disappointing season for a very not disappointing team. So, any thoughts on Greg Bird going forward?
Honestly, it's really unsurprising. He tore his labrum last year, and if you look historically at hitters, especially power hitters like Greg Bird, who tear their labrums, it usually changes their careers irreversibly. I'm just be blatantly it's harsh, but he's probably not gonna honestly live up to his potential. If I'm in my opinion, which really pains me to say because he's a Yankee, obviously, and he really looked like a talented and effective player in the majors last year, and I had high hopes for him. But unfortunately, I just don't know how good he's gonna be because of that injury, and you could really see it this year. He struggled a lot, just with major league pitching post injury. He wasn't that good in spring training this year, so he definitely at least needs a lot more time to recover from it. At the very least, I would not say this year he's going to be anything worthwhile. And fantasy wise, I would say this year's honestly just one to forget for him. I think from a fantasy perspective, I would be looking for a bounce back season with finding more time off and more training next year.
Yeah, and Greg Bird, the worst thing for him is that the Yankees are playing so well they can't afford to give him at bats. Really, they can't keep using him. They have Chris Carter, they have Matt Holliday, who's been used as a DH almost exclusively, but they can throw him there if they need to. And Aaron Hicks been seen taking some ground balls at first base in practice, so that is an interesting development there. If Aaron Hicks goes to first base, is he a must-own right away? Because Aaron Hicks right now, just because of playing time, is kind of on the brink. If he plays first base for the Yankees, is Aaron Hicks a must-own player?
I would say, yeah. I mean, Rudy and I talked about him last week, and our biggest hang-up was his playing time. But, I mean, as well as he's played so far this year, if he's going to play, own him. So if he does make that move to first base, then, yeah, I'd be willing to gamble on Aaron Hicks.
Yeah, absolutely. I like Hicks a lot as well. So I guess now is that we've been pushing it off so long, I guess now it's time to roast Matt Harvey once and for all. We've been doing quite a bit of it recently, but I think we'll get it all out of our systems one last time and then move on from it for a while. How about that? Sound good?
Yes.
Yeah.
All right.
I mean, didn't the Contramaster want to have a little spiel on Matt Harvey?
I mean, he did give a pretty comprehensive spiel last week. So, do you have anything more?
Go ahead.
We talked.
All you for bed.
Oh, so no, so you're nothing even new. Just, I think it's fair to just leave the character issues out of it for now. The fact is that he's still pitching for the Mets, and he's not been particularly sharp. And this is a guy that relies a lot on velocity. Velocity hasn't been there. Guy relies a lot on command of the fastball. That hasn't really been there. I don't think Matt Harvey is a top 30 pitcher for me even. No. I think that's how far he's fallen. That's how far he's fallen.
Yeah, this year he's on a downward trend right now, obviously with that off the field issue mixed in, but he has not had a quality start since April 21st and has not had a win since April 11th, his second start of the year. Yeah, it's not he's definitely fallen off quite a bit.
Yeah, so I think that's going to wrap up our little segment of most surprising and most disappointing anyway. And, Farbode, I think if you want to go ahead and lead us into our little segment of This Week in Out of the Park, then you can go for that real quick before we end up the show.
I do. So I don't think I need to introduce Out of the Park baseball again. Wait, do I?
Yeah, you do.
Yeah.
Because
okay, so Out of the Park baseball is.
I thought it was called Oot. I always thought it was Oot.
No, Out of the Park baseball is a Oot. It's a computer game where you basically simulate being a general manager. It's kind of weird. It's funny, and you get funny news. And I try to find the funniest ones and send it to these guys every week. And the most recent one, as reported yesterday in the Toronto News Toronto Blue Jays first baseman Kyle R. Martin had built a drone during the offseason and was using it to snap some pictures around the team's spring training facility. There were apparently some people in Major League Baseball head offices who were not a big fan of the drone. Apparently they had the drone grounded as they didn't like Martin flying around the stadium. Hearing of the ban, Kyle R. Martin took to social media. Hey MLB, if you're going to ban drones, can I at least have that rule named in my honor? So yeah.
I guess now we know that Trevor Bauer writes for Out of the Park. I guess that's the only takeaway there. So we'll try to throw in more of those as we go along. But that's going to do it for this podcast. I think we covered quite a few fantasy players this week. So as always, we'd absolutely love your feedback. We'd love to hear your questions. We'll answer all of them on the podcast. You can do that by tweeting us at WPB_podcast. You can check out our website for all of the recent podcasts and any new articles that we release if we actually release articles, and that's the place to find those. You can email us at warandpeacebaseball@gmail.com if you're not into asking questions on social media. And I'd like to remind you that this podcast is available on YouTube, iTunes, and some of it on SoundCloud. Again, we're having some problems with uploading there, but we'd like to get to the point where we upload them every week to all three of those places. iTunes and YouTube are for sure every week, as long as the files don't get corrupted. So that is it. Thanks for joining us again. As always, Farbode.
Peace.